Alexander Holtz impressed during the Prospects Challenge, and we're going to talk more about his impressive outing against the Montreal Canadiens. But there were also a few other young guns for New Jersey Devils that impressed. So a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. I need some help, so I'm going to use one of Christy Flannery's From the Hockey Writers articles to help break it all down. A lot to talk about. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, and also Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, Trey Matthews. Well, I pointed at the wrong thing. There we go. There's my graphic. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll understand. So, in the previous episode, I talked about the shocking announcement that PK Subban was calling it a career, and I think this pretty much paves the way for PK Subban to do media appearances. I think he's going to stick to his gig with ESPN. Also, NHL Network is probably an option if he hasn't done so already. And overall, I think PK Subban is going to have a pretty decent career post-hockey playing. So I support PK Subban. I was a little stunned to hear the news, considering the fact that he's still in his low 30s, but still could be somewhat effective on a bottom four defense for maybe a somewhat competitive team. But ultimately, he decided to stop playing after 13 years, and best wishes moving forward. And I also talked about Jonathan Bernier's situation. So Jonathan Bernier, according to Ryan Novosinski, will not be ready to play come preseason or the regular season. However, Julie Robbenheimer did state that maybe he'll be ready to go at around Thanksgiving time. So there's your update on Jonathan Bernier, and I'll welcome him back with open arms. But, I'm not really getting my expectations all that high because I anticipate for Jonathan Bernier to also hang up the skates. But today's episode, we're going back to the young guns. So obviously, the New Jersey Devils recently had their Prospects Challenge. I talked about Alexander Holtz and his strong showing against the Montreal Canadiens. I said that Alexander Holtz, during the course of the Prospects Challenge and now upcoming preseason games and also training camp and whatever practice New Jersey Devils might have, he needs to show out in every single event because the top six for New Jersey Devils are pretty much a lock at this point. So you got Jack Hughes at the center position. Then on the second line, you got Nico Hischier. And then surrounding them, it's going to be Andre Palat, Jesper Bratt, Yegor Sharangovich. And it seems like Dawson Mercer has locked himself in the top six as well. I would be stunned if he were to start the season on the bottom six, but I anticipate Dawson Mercer to be paired alongside with Jack Hughes and Yegor Sharangovich. So top six is pretty much a lock, but the bottom six, and I talked about it in a series of episodes last week, how it's pretty much up for grabs. So players like Miles Wood, they don't really have a lock either because Miles Wood is coming off of an injury-plagued year in which he was only able to suit up in a few games. And Dan Rice, one of my colleagues over at Pucks and Pitchforks and also a friend of the show, he anticipates that Miles Wood will be one of those players that are just fighting tooth and nail for the for some job openings in the bottom six. However, I think that Miles Wood has a solidified position with the New Jersey Devils, and you're going to get players like Fabian Zetterlund, you're going to get players like Nikita Ohotuk, Kevin Ball, and Alexander Holtz fighting for positions, whether it be for forwards or defense, whatever the case might be. There's just basically the point I'm trying to make is that there's going to be a lot of young guns who are competing for roster spots for the New Jersey Devils, and we're going to go back to that. So Christy Flannery, she's a writer for the Hockey Writers covering the New Jersey Devils, friend of the show, has appeared on it multiple times, and she released an article recently talking about some of the takeaways that she saw in the prospects game for the New Jersey Devils in which they took on the Buffalo Sabres. So Christy Flannery is a credentialed writer for the New Jersey Devils, so she was able to get a firsthand experience, and we're going to talk about some of her key takeaways, some players to look out for, and I'm going to provide you guys my 2-cent opinions on what the status of this respective player might be. And I might repeat myself in some sort of ways because she also mentioned Alexander Holtz. So for any of you who are new to the show, I'll give you guys my overall opinion on what I think about Alexander Holtz and where he stands in terms of being on the roster for New Jersey Devils. So without further ado, let's get into this article courtesy of Christy Flannery. So the first player she talks about is Kevin Ball. So The thing about Kevin Ball is that they got a chance to see him play in all situations as the coaching staff opted to give him a look on the power play, and they were happy with his performance. Even though he collected 3 points, Ball is aware that his offensive contributions may not be his ticket to a regular spot in the NHL. Now, I forget my overall prediction. I know, look, I do so many episodes that it all just gets clustered together. But when I was looking at Dan Rice's article and his overall opinion as to like who can make the roster for New Jersey Devils, Kevin Ball was certainly a factor into like, maybe players that could just sneak their way in to the opening night roster for New Jersey Devils. And, there's a lot of key takeaways in that sort of regard. So when looking at that article, once again, Dan Rice broke it up into a few parts. So he said roster battle royale, and he said automatic locks and players that are going to be fighting tooth and nail. So players that could potentially get traded, waived, or sent down, whatever the case might be. So Kevin Ball falls underneath the roster battle royale, as in, he might have a chance, but at the same time, he shouldn't be like sleeping too well at night because he's not an automatic lock. So the contenders, he said, going back to that article, were Riley Walsh, Kevin Ball, and Simona Metz. And out of those 3, it's all coming back to me now. I said that Kevin Ball would make the roster over Riley Walsh and Simona Metz for this main reason. There's no reason to rush Simona Metz. And Riley Walsh, while he was able to get a cup of coffee in the NHL this past season, and even though I'm riding the high horse for Riley Walsh just because I feel as though he definitely has a lot of potential, especially since he was a defensive teammate of Adam Fox, and Adam Fox was able to learn a lot from Lindy Ruff when he was an assistant coach for the New York Rangers just a few years ago. I said that I think the best chance of making the roster between Walsh, Ball, and the Mets was Ball, because Kevin Ball has the more NHL experience. He was able to be sort of a spark plug for the New Jersey Devils. So I think Kevin Ball, while he's aware of his offensive liabilities, or maybe not liabilities, but just not, while Kevin Ball might be aware of his lackadaisical offense, or maybe lackadaisical is not the right adjective, but just more of he still has a lot of work to do on that sort of end. I still think Kevin Ball is not really giving himself enough credit, because the thing is, he doesn't need to, have an offensive game. It would help and help him stand out. But if he's able to hold down his fort, if he's able to, continue to do what he was doing during the Prospects Challenge and impress these coaches, he would still have a legitimate chance of making the roster. Now, he doesn't have his ticket punched to the NHL. He is correct about that. But I think he's not giving himself enough credit. I think Kevin Ball definitely has a lot of potential for New Jersey Devils. And I think his size and just his ability to be a shot suppressor and just keep offensive possessions alive for New Jersey Devils in their own offensive end, I think Kevin Ball definitely has a shot of making the NHL. And like I said, going back to Dan Rice's article, if I had to pick between Ball, Walsh, or Nemets, I'm going to go with Ball, just because there's no rush to get Walsh or Nemets onto the NHL roster at this particular moment. So the next player she talked about was Nikita Ohotuk. Now, here's the thing about Ohotuk, because he's doing sort of what I want to see Fabian Zetterlund do, which is he's taking no prisoners. So according to the article of Christy Flannery, Ohotuk dropped the gloves and fought John Parker Jones, who is listed at 6'7" and 230 pounds. So he's a big boy. So to make no mistake, Ohotuk, when I say take no prisoners, he doesn't care how big or small you are, he's going to take it. So the Montreal prospect, and I mentioned it in one of my more previous episodes, hit Simona Metz. And according to the article, Ohotuk and the Mets are roommates, and the physical play continued when he suited up for the Boston Bruins, taking a boarding penalty in the second period and game misconduct for continuing to fight in the third against Jackson Edward. Now, I love the effort from Nikita Ohotuk, but fighting is not going to guarantee you a roster spot. So while I do respect the fact that he was just trying to stick up for his friend and, he's just trying to, get his name out there, I have all the respect in the world. But I just, look, I like a good fight as much as the next guy. I like payback as much as the next person. It's one of the reasons why I, defended Mason Gearston when he decided to fight the Seattle Kraken. Who did he fight? He fought Lawson after Lawson's hit on Jack Hughes that ultimately took Jack Hughes out for a few months. I respected Gearston for doing so, but then he started to overdo it just a little too much. I'm just like, at this point, yes, he's getting his name out there, and yes, he's guaranteeing him a spot on the roster. But at the same time, I just don't want to see that night in and night out. So I respect Nikita Ohotuk. I think he has definitely a bright future. he definitely has some room to develop. And in the 5 game appearances he played for the New Jersey Devils, he was able to rack up 2 points. So I think he's heading in the right direction. And I'm glad that he was able to stick up for his teammate. But at the same time, just don't overdo it. That's all I got to say for Nikita Ohotuk in that sort of regards. Now, before we continue with today's episode, I want to bring you guys the first and only live read this morning. And it comes from our friends at BetOnline. So BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information and live betting and up-to-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easy way of checking on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please remember to gamble responsibly and visit our friends at Locked On Bets for all your betting needs there as well. Okay, let's continue to dissect this article courtesy of Christy Flannery. Now, the big one, Alexander Holtz has arrived, and here's what Christy Flannery had to say in the article. There was an understanding that the spotlight would be on Holtz the second he arrived in New Jersey because, remember, Alexander Holtz is going to be fighting tooth and nail for a roster spot for the New Jersey Devils because he went from being the favorite coveted prospect to now basically being like 3rd or 4th because there's so many prospects that have been able to impress for the New Jersey Devils so far during this like year or 2 span. So obviously Dawson Mercer was able to win the final roster spot over him. Then you got Luke Hughes. Simona Metz was selected 2nd overall, even though not many people are talking about him. I think Simona Metz definitely has a lot of upside to his game. So when looking at it from that perspective, Alexander Holtz has kind of fallen out of the favorite role, but he didn't take it personally. He was able to still put up good production for the Utica Comets. And I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but if Alexander Holtz was not performing well in Utica, then I would be concerned about his overall development. And, you know, rightfully so, people do have their concern about how is he going to develop in the NHL? How is he going to perform? My overall thing is like, look, you know, we didn't give him a chance to succeed. We didn't give him a significant role. And in 9 game appearances, he only had 2 assists. And he had a plus-minus of -5. So, yeah, he didn't impress. But at the same time, I don't think it's something to be concerned about because look what happened in Utica. He was given a major role, and he was able to make the most out of it. So I think that's what we need to focus on, Alexander Holtz. And the fact that he was able to show out in the first game against the Montreal Canadiens, that was actually very impressive because he took it upon himself to lead the Devils to victory. Because Ryan Novozinski actually tweeted this out. When you saw Alexander Holtz miss his first 3 shots, you knew that he was like looking for something. He was playing with a chip on his shoulder. He was like a starving lion on the hunt. He wanted to take what was his. And the fact that he put the work in over the offseason, training with Jesper Bratt, training with his brother as well, I think that Alexander Holtz is definitely going to be heading in the right direction. So the fact that he was training with the Bratt brothers, the fact that he's gotten stronger, he's more bulky, and you know, the fact that he's not even slower, he actually got faster and he seems a lot smarter out there. That's going to help him because I will die on the hill saying that Alexander Holtz and Dawson Mercer were pretty much neck and neck when looking at last year's preseason, because I was just like, I would have loved to have both make the opening night roster, but if I had to choose one or the other, I would have chosen Dawson Mercer, and I predicted that because Dawson Mercer, and I talked to Bryce Salvador about this when he appeared on the show, I said that it just looked like that Dawson Mercer was making smart hockey moves out there. He was making moves that you can't really teach. So, and that kind of hurt Alexander Holtz. And there's nothing to be ashamed in that regards. All Alexander Holtz has to do is just like, you know, play the game from a different angle. And he did so. So like training with the Bratt brothers, getting himself into better shape, getting faster out there, taking it upon himself to take charge and take lead. Even if he didn't score a single point, you still saw the determination from Alexander Holtz. So I love the effort. And I think the coaching staff also appreciates the effort from Alexander Holtz. So Kevin Dineen started him on the top line against the Canadiens with Nolan Foote and Chase Stillman. The Swede made an impact by scoring the game-tying goal with under 2 minutes left in regulation and netting the game winner in overtime and receiving a pass from the Mets. And we'll talk about the Mets momentarily and where I stand with his overall development. But like Christy Flannery said, and I think Kevin Dineen also realized it as well, just the fact that Alexander Holtz is willing to just go the extra mile for his team, and the fact that he took it upon himself to try to lead them to victory, I'm actually really impressed. And I'm very proud of what Alexander Holtz has been able to do so far. And I said during the course of silly season discussions over the summer, I said, I don't want to trade Alexander Holtz. I want him on the roster. He's one of my no-touch prospects. So Luke Hughes, Alexander Holtz, and before we drafted Simona Metz, I said the second overall pick, and also Dawson Mercer. He was on my list of players that I just don't want to see traded in the prospects pool. Now, will it be enough to beat Fabian Zetterlund for the final roster spot? I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens come preseason, which is right around the corner, actually. So we're just about 5 days away from taking on the Montreal Canadiens once again for preseason, and we're already seeing media day. We're already seeing the veterans report to camp, so excited to see that. Now, the moment of truth for Alexander Holtz is like, yes, he was able to lead the prospects challenge. He was able to stand out. But here's what Alexander Holtz has to focus on. Now, can you translate that to playing with veteran players? And I get preseason is only a small glimpse of what a player is capable of doing because, we've seen people have good preseasons and not good regular seasons. We've seen people have, mediocre preseasons, but they show out during the regular season. It's only I try not to read too far into scrimmages. I try not to read too far into exhibition games. And quite honestly, I'm not really a big fan of veteran players playing in preseason just because you run the risk of injury because you have nothing to gain, but you have everything to lose. And truth be told, it happened to Miles Wood, which is during preseason, he got hurt and he missed like 97% of the season. He only suited up in like a few games, and I just said there was no point in playing him. But the point I'm just trying to make is like for Alexander Holtz during preseason, he needs to translate that to playing with other veteran players. So, translate that while playing with Jack Hughes, with Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, the guy you were working out with over the summer, and with his brother Philip Bratt as well. So my thing is like I think Alexander Holtz is off to a great start, but the job is not finished. You have not guaranteed yourself a roster spot because now the coaching staff, especially Lindy Ruff and Tom Fitzgerald and everybody, they're going to be looking at you even closer. So you set the bar high and you need to continue to march forward because the fact of the matter is this, like, yes, during the Prospects Challenge, he was able to help the New Jersey Devils, but you're playing against other young prospects. So what does that remind me of? That's just playing in Utica all over. And one of the things I mentioned and the one of the things I said in my overall analysis about Alexander Holtz is that he's able to play well against other young guys, and that's why he was able to light it up in Utica, but can he translate that to playing with veteran pieces? Now, that's just going to have to be a wait-and-see kind of ordeal, but that's where I stand with Alexander Holtz, which is great showing, set the bar high, played with a lot of great young guys, but now can you translate that to playing with veteran pieces? So that's my overall stance with Alexander Holtz and where he has been, and I agree with Christy Flannery. Holtz knows how important it is to start training camp on the right foot and means displaying his skills and development each and every opportunity is given to him. So Christy Flannery and I are on the same page once again about his overall development, and I think Kevin Dineen recognized it at first, and now let's just see if Lindy Ruff and friends and staff can also see Alexander Holtz and his overall development. Now, finally, we're going to talk about Simona Metz. So here's what Christy Flannery had to say. New Jersey's second overall pick made his debut on September 16th against the Canadiens. The 18-year-old displayed confidence and poise with puck control, quickly impressing both media and fans. After the game, the Comets head coach, Kevin Dineen, once again, said he's a guy that doesn't lack confidence, and he's got such poise with the puck on his stick, and he defends well. I'm really impressed with his stick. He's going one way and passing the other. There's some deception to his game. He was a little surprised when we told him that he was going to play on the power play, but he was a solid game for him. So for Simona Metz, once again, similar to Alexander Holtz, off on the right foot. And Metz earned the lone assist on Holtz's game-winning goal in OT. And remember, Nikita Ohotuk had his back when he felt as though Metz was done dirty on a hit. So the thing about Simona Metz, and my buddy Jersey Joe loves Simona Metz and predicted that the New Jersey Devils were going to draft him. Off to a great start, but I think there's zero chance that Simona Metz makes the opening night roster for the New Jersey Devils because there's no room for him. And similar to Alexander Holtz, do you really want to put Simona Metz into a vulnerable position where he's not going to perform well. It's going to, shift his confidence the other way, because going into training camp, he had high confidence and he was able to show out. But keep him in Utica until you bring up Luke Hughes, until you clear out maybe Damon Severson, Ryan Graves, or somebody else, so that way there's more room for someone like Luke Hughes and also Simona Metz to develop their games hand in hand. So Simona Metz really did impress me, and I'm glad that he was able to have a good showing and a good debut. But similar to Alexander Holtz, how is that going to translate into playing with other veteran pieces? And this is one of the reasons, okay, I have a confusing relationship with preseason. On the one hand, I don't like it when veterans play just because they run the risk of injury. But on the other hand, it's just like you get your young guys a chance, they play with the veterans, and you just get a small sort of preview as to what they can do on the rink when not playing with just like rookies or young guns out there. So when looking at Simona Metz, I'm looking forward to see what he does during preseason with other veteran pieces, and just see like, how is this game going to develop? How is he going to translate his game from playing overseas to now playing in the Prospects Challenge, now to playing now? Because a lot of people were, criticizing the New Jersey Devils for passing up on players like Shane Wright or Logan Cooley when Uri Slafkovsky went first overall. And a lot of people were scratching their heads. They were like, why did you draft Simona Metz? And I said, you don't draft the best player available. You draft what you need. Unless you're the first overall pick, then you draft the first available player, or the best player, excuse me. So yeah, that's why we're already stacked at the forward position with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer, and others. It was time to get another defenseman to develop alongside with Luke Hughes. So yeah, that's my overall stance. And once again, shout out to Christy Flannery of the Hockey Writers for releasing this article. And there's my overall opinion. So what did you guys think about the Prospects Challenge? If you watched it, or if you were following along with it on Twitter, social media, or online, whatever the case might be, which players stood out for you, and which players do you think are going to make a somewhat of an impact once they're given a chance to play on the New Jersey Devils roster? Curious to hear your guys' thoughts. So leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on a podcast streaming service, make sure to follow me on my personal Twitter page at TreyMatt4 and the show's Twitter page at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.